Hi, it's Debra Sewell, and we are going to do part 2 of evaluation and instruction for students with visual impairments. Since evaluation and instruction in the expanded core curriculum is our job, we're going to talk a little bit about its importance. Why is the ECC important? Because the expanded core curriculum provides opportunities for equality for students who are blind and visually impaired. To not teach it is to deny this basic human right. That is a quote from Dr. Phil Hatland. He was our superintendent at Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and he wrote that quote in a See Here newsletter article in 2005. And now the ECC is in Texas law, so it is really important. The Texas Education Code 30.002 requires that a student must have an evaluation of the impairment and instruction in an expanded core curriculum. There is the citation for the Texas Education Code at the bottom of this slide. What we know, the ECC is as important as the ABCs. What that means basically is academics and ECC are equally comparable, and we really need to be working on the ECC for our students with visual impairments. So the ECC is vital because the knowledge obtained will result in positive adult outcomes, and TSVIs and COMs are mostly addressing compensatory skills in O&M. So that was according to some surveys that were taken a while back, but I think it's probably still applicable. We know that academics are not enough. We know that evaluations are the basis for all programming. So we need to do evaluations in the ECC. And basically, what point is there in reading and writing and being able to do calculus and chemistry if you have no friends, you have no social life, and you can't get a job? So the ECC is crucial for our kiddos. What we're not doing. You can see two pictures here on the slide of a young lady shopping in a grocery store in the produce section, and another slide of students in a classroom. And what we're not doing is we are not always addressing the ECC because the current emphasis on academics and on high stakes testing. Sometimes ECC has to take a back seat to that because our kids are needing to also have that instruction given them. But we do know that there has to be a balance between book smarts and life smarts. There's a picture on this slide of a cute little boy playing outside, pointing at a butterfly. But we don't always reach this balance. We know we should have this balance, but we don't always reach this balance. We're going to talk first about some evaluations that support the instruction in ECC. And I'm just going to read these lists first, and then we're going to go into specific areas that are addressed in these evaluations. The Oregon Project, Perkins, Insight, Functional Scheme, Carolina Curriculum for Infants and Toddlers, Carolina Curriculum for Preschoolers. Those are some of the evals that support ECC. The Brigance, the evals, and including in the infused skills evals in that book. Essential Tools of the Trade is a new book for functional vision and LMA instruction, which I shared with you earlier. Texas Two Steps is an early intervention O&M curriculum, and it covers many areas, not just O&M, but it covers many areas of the ECC, including concept development and some of the other compensatory areas like listening skills. And the last book that I want to share with you is the ECC Resources for Evaluation and Instruction. The Oregon Project, and you can see the website there, which is where you can go to get the Oregon Project, and that site is from the South Oregon Education Service District, and it has all of the Oregon projects or the Oregon evaluations on that site. The Oregon project comprehensive has got these areas. It deals with cognitive, language, compensatory, vision, self-help, social, fine motor, and gross motor. And of course, all of these areas are areas of the ECC. Fine motor and gross motor are connected to O&M skills, but they are also connected to the tactile discrimination skills our kids need for tactile exploration, discovery, and Braille reading. The Perkins Activity and Resource Guide is another curriculum that addresses areas of the ECC, and you can see from that website that is where you go to get more information about the Perkins Activity and Resource Guide. The checklists that are included in the Perkins are motor development, gross and fine motor, functional academics, vocational skills for all ages, daily living skills, independent living skills, sensory integration, orientation and mobility, and functional vision. And again, these are all areas of the ECC. The Insight Developmental Checklist from Hope Publications has the following categories: gross motor, fine motor, self-help, cognition, social, emotional, communication, vision, auditory, and tactile development. Again, all areas of the ECC. The Insight Developmental Checklist is probably one of my favorite checklists. We used it, the committee that put together Texas Two Steps, used it pretty often to help us figure out what objectives we wanted to include in Texas Two Steps. We're also working on another project right now called a progression of tactile learning, and we are developing a tactile profile, and we use the Insight Developmental Checklist for that as well. So this is one of my favorite evaluations. The Functional Scheme Assessment from LilyWorks website up there. You can go get more information. These are the areas that are in the functional scheme assessment: gross motor, fine motor, mouth movement, visual perception, auditory perception, haptic tactile perception, smell and taste, spatial perception, and object perception. And there are more for the functional scheme evaluation. It also evaluates nonverbal language and verbal language and comprehension of language, social perception, emotional perception, play and activities, toileting skills, undressing and dressing, personal hygiene, and eating skills. It is broken down into very small increments. The Insight and the functional scheme are broken down into pretty small incremental steps. So kids who are functioning at a lower level or who are young and need those incremental steps in order to show progress, these two evaluations are great for that. The Oregon is, again, one of my favorites, but the steps in the Oregon are in pretty big chunks. The next evaluation that I want to talk about that deals with or includes, not deals with, but includes ECC areas is the Carolina Curriculum for Infants and Toddlers with Special Needs. And you get it from Brooks Publishing. The areas that are covered in the Carolina are personal social skills, which includes interpersonal skills, self-concept and self-help skills, cognition, which includes attention and memory, visual perception, problem solving, and concept development, communication, which includes verbal comprehension and conversation skills. It also has a fine motor section and a gross motor section. The next one I want to talk about is the Carolina for preschoolers. And again, you can get the same, you can get it at brookspublishing.com. And it has the same areas that the Carolina for Infants and Toddlers has. The TPI2, the Transition Planning Inventory, comes from ProEd, and it is not written for students with visual impairments. And the Carolinas are not either, but they're pretty applicable. The TPI2 was written for special needs kids, but not specifically for students with visual impairments. But the areas that are in the TPI2 inventory are working and under working, there's career choice and planning, employment knowledge and skills. And under learning, there's further education and training and self-determination. Living, under that area, there's independent living, community involvement, leisure activities, health issues, and interpersonal relationships. Again, areas of the ECC, even though it was not specifically written for students with visual impairments. Another one of the evaluations that includes ECC areas is the Brigance. And the inventory of early development includes physical development, fine and gross motor skills, which again relates to O&M, but it also relates to tactile learning, the tactile skills that you need to learn. Because if you, in gross motor, if you can't stabilize your body and have a sense of where you are in space, then reading and discovering about your world is going to be tough. It also includes a language development section, receptive and expressive, both, and academic skills and cognitive development. In that area, in that section, there are literacy and math skills that are evaluated, objectives that are evaluated. Adaptive behavior is daily living skills, and social and emotional development. In that area of the early development Brigance, there's interpersonal skills and self-regulatory skills. Another Brigance is the transition skills inventory. And this one also deals with areas that are and should be included in the expanded core. Post-secondary education and training, employment, independent living, and community participation. So all of these areas in the transition skills inventory Brigance deal with career ed, independent living, social skills. So this is also another really nice evaluation for expanded core curriculum areas. The EVALS publication, which EVALS stands for Evaluating Visually Impaired Students Using Alternative Learning Standards, emphasizing the expanded core curriculum. It includes 5 books, and in those 5 books, the first section, section 1, book 1, is ECC evaluations. Section 2 also has ECC evaluations. Section 3 is a practical academics set of evaluations for kids who are functioning below grade level. It has science, social studies, math, language arts evaluations for kids who are functioning not on grade level, but probably 2 or 3 grade levels behind. And some are even for kids who are functioning the modified and alternate kind of kiddos. There's some evaluations in section 3 that are also for those kids who would be taking the alt state testing. The fourth part of EVALS is an independent living evaluation booklet, and the 5th part is a TAPS evaluation booklet. Texas 2 Steps is an O&M curriculum. STEPS stands for Successfully Teaching Early Purposeful Skills. Texas 2 Steps curriculum has 2 sections. It's got a mobility section and an orientation section. The mobility section starts evaluating. There's an evaluation tool and a curriculum. There's a picture of the curriculum here on the slide. The evaluation is completely connected to the curriculum. So you do the evaluation, and some of the areas for the mobility section are head control, trunk, arm, and leg control, reaching, grasping, rolling, sitting, standing, jumping, kicking. And so you do the evaluation for those kiddos. And then the curriculum has coordinated activities. So if your child is not doing one of the skills in the evaluation for let's just say rolling, then you go find that section in the curriculum, and it's got a page of activities for you to remediate that skill if they don't have it. So Texas Two Steps curriculum is an O&M curriculum, but it also has concept development in the orientation section and some tactile skills as well. This book is the Expanded Core Curriculum for Students with Visual Impairments, resources for evaluation and instruction. So for all 9 areas of the ECC, this book contains evaluation resources, instructional resources, and then some general resources. So for example, for independent living, it would have a page of, or maybe 2 pages of independent living skills evaluations. And it comes with a flash drive. So you can say, oh, I want to go see what this independent living evaluation is. You plug in your flash drive, you click on that link, and it will take you to Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired Independent Living Evaluation, and you can read a little bit more about that. So for all, I mean, that's not the only one in there. All of these 9 areas have multiple resources for evaluation, multiple resources for instructional strategies, and then multiple resources just for general information about each area of the expanded core. The evaluation process includes collaboration, observation and interviews, completing the checklists, and you should complete them in more than one environment, school, home, and community, and sharing the results. So regardless of what evaluation instrument you're using, this is always the case. You should collaborate with others, do observations and interviews, and complete the checklists that you're using. And then of course you are going to share the results with the other people working with this kiddo. So in observation, what are we looking for? So when you look at your checklist, you can see what you're supposed to be evaluating, and you can observe with specific evaluations, specific objectives from those evaluations in mind. So make sure that you're very familiar with the evaluation. Look over the evaluation and make a short list of things you want to look for. And if you don't, if the environment isn't conducive to looking for that particular objective, then go look in the other environments go observe in the other environments that the student is in. You could observe and watch this student in the classroom, the cafeteria, the gym, the hall, at recess, in their academic classes, in the home environment, on O&M lessons. So you really need to look at the same skill in more than one environment to get a big picture of what's happening. The next step would be completing the checklist. So you pull your information together from your observations and your interviews with family and other staff members. And in the essential tools of the trade book we mentioned in the first section of this training, there are parent interviews, family interviews, staff interviews, other staff interviews, teacher interviews, which is staff, student interviews. So you could look in that book, the essential tools of the trade book, if you have it, and find interviews that you could use when you're trying to pull your information together. So the next bullet says complete as much of the checklist as possible with the information that you've gathered with your interviews and your observations. Identify any remaining skills that you need to specifically test in a structured situation, and gather the materials that you need to use to evaluate those specific objectives, and schedule and complete your evaluations. It's really, really important because of this, especially that bullet number 3, identify the remaining skills that you haven't been able to answer with your observations and interviews. It's really important for you to be familiar with the objectives, because you don't want to get into the testing situation and not have the materials that you need and have to go scramble around and gather them when you are in the middle of your evaluation. And then you schedule and you complete your evaluations.